meeting of the Carson City Open Space Advisory Committee to order. One clock says 5:30, others say 5:31, so it's Monday, December 19th. This is our regular meeting. We appreciate having folks in the audience, and thank you for attending. Can we start with a roll call, please, Catherine?
Chairperson Scott.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Welch. Member Evans.
Here.
Member Fitzsimmons. Member Hall.
Here.
Member Inverson.
Here.
Member Assad.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Ann, do we have any word from Alan on his schedule?
I think he sent an email that he would be out of town today.
Okay,
Yep.
and I understand Laura is as well, so. Okay, with that, do we have any opening public comments from anyone who would like to say anything to the committee at this point? Separately from any agenda items where you'll have an opportunity to comment when those come up, but is there any other general public comment people would like to make? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for consideration and approval of the minutes of our last meeting, October 17th, 2016. Has everyone looked at the minutes, or are there any comments, changes?
I verified that I was indeed not here.
Okay, that's good. We're glad you're here tonight. Okay, do we have any comments or changes, or do we have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for October 17th, 2016.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jerry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Our next item is any modifications to the agenda. Ann?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move 4A up to the beginning of the agenda, please.
Thank you. That is the staff update on department strategic planning, organizational structure, and recruitment for vacant positions. Is everyone comfortable with moving that up to the head of the meeting? Okay, thank you. Jennifer, this looks like it has your name on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I did want to provide you with a quick update about some changes in the department, especially some recent staff vacancies and what our plan is to recruit and fill those vacancies. I did want to let you know that Rich Wilkinson is no longer with the organization. He was our senior natural resource specialist. That position's very important to the department, and while we're sad to see him go, we wish him well. But we recognize that it's so important for the department to fill that position. So we went to the Internal Finance Committee, got approval, and we've already started advertising that position. It will be open until December 29th. So anyone interested in that position, we welcome you to apply. And we are advertising that, throughout the United States in a lot of professional capacities. So we're hoping to get that out. If you want a copy of that recruitment announcement, if you know anyone that's interested, let me know. I'm happy to send that to you. Any questions on that one before I move on?
When's the closing date again?
December 29th.
Okay, so it's a quick.
Yeah, it's a total of a 3-week recruitment.
Great. Okay.
From when we opened it.
I'm glad to see you moving on that.
Yeah, thank you. So are we. I know Ian is as well. We also have a recreation program supervisor position open that reports to the recreation division. That one's open until January 5th. And then we hired a recreation superintendent. His name is Dan Earp. He's coming to us from Hermiston, Oregon. And we did a small reorganization within the department. We reorganized the recreation division so they will have better opportunities to move up within the organization. Hopefully we create better communication opportunities and have this recreation superintendent will manage the entire recreation division of the department. That will give me 4 less direct reports as well. So it'll give more attention and time to those recreation, especially the program managers. So I'm excited for that change, and I think it'll be a good move in the direction. Prior to the recession, we did have a recreation superintendent, so it's kind of trying to build back to that larger department and creating those opportunities. The Trails Coordinator that we've talked about previously. Excited to announce that we have finalized a job description and announcements and all of that, and we will have that open by the first week in January. So it may actually open earlier, but that's a part-time position, so 20 hours a week. It's not benefited, but it will be a year-round position, so we're excited to have that. And then our strategic planning is still underway, and thank you to Chairman Scott for participating so far in our strategic plan, and we'll have a more formal presentation probably at the next meeting and an update on where we're at that. So that's a quick update, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions? Just an observation. Hopefully a great person as the Trails Coordinator. We could consider a potential upgrade in the position over time to bring benefits or other reasons for a good person, should we find them in that position, to stay on and grow with open space. That's obviously down the road, but just a thought.
Agreed. We would love for it to be a full-time position, so that would be a fantastic goal. And I apologize, I forgot to mention a very exciting opportunity. We've secured the funding to be able to hire 3 AmeriCorps Vista positions for the department. The managers within parks are still trying to kind of work out the details of where we would have these people, but I know a volunteer coordinator position is so important to this board, and at minimum, one of the positions will be dedicated to being a volunteer coordinator for the entire department, including the open space division. Another important function for at least one of the other, if not both of the other positions, will be for education and outreach. So assisting our park rangers, assisting recreation staff, maybe leading, hikes and talks, and just really focusing on that education and outreach portion that, we really don't have the staff or financial resources to be able to fulfill. Want them to do that. We might be able to have one reporting to open space, one reporting to parks, one reporting to recreation. We're still trying to figure out the whole mechanics of that. But we're going to pursue 3 full-time AmeriCorps Vista positions. It's very low cost. There's no overhead to the city. So the human resource costs, the workers' comp costs that typically come with a standard city position won't come with this. This is part of the AmeriCorps Vista grant. And we're being sponsored by the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation through a grant that they've received, and they're willing to go outside, obviously, the Truckee Meadows, but to partner with us. So we're really grateful to them and looking forward to that partnership. But we anticipate these positions coming on probably in April, and would have them for an entire year. So the marketing and outreach component would focus on things that I know that are really near and dear to your heart. We fully agree that we need a lot of help with promoting our functions and our mission and our programs, and they could focus on the website and outreach and education and in so many different facets that we just really don't currently have the staff to be able to do. So we are going to pursue that, and hopefully I'll have a more finite update at the next meeting.
Hey, Jen, could you reiterate when the Trails Coordinator position was going to open and close?
It will open most likely by the first week in January. It may be a little bit earlier. HR has a lot of recruitments going on right now, so it'll just depend on the timing of their staff, and it should be open 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. And we can send that out to you when we get that posted.
Thank you.
Jen, that's great. Ann and Jennifer, would you please be sure we have an agenda item on our next agenda to kind of bring us up to speed on where we are? There's a lot of exciting things going on with regard to staff help, so that would be great if we can stay in that loop. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Is there any public comment? Okay, that is not an action item. We'll go back to our first item for presentation and discussion, item 3A. This is the Wetlands Enhancement Project being done by Ducks Unlimited. John Ranlett is here tonight with Ducks Unlimited. And Ann, your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ann Bollinger, for the record. To provide a little background for our newest open space members and for the public, back in 2014, Ducks Unlimited had heard about some of our acquisitions in the canyon. The SERPA acquisition, which was facilitated by Nevada Land Trust. They saw that acquisition in a newsletter, and they thought it was a great opportunity to have match funding for some watershed and wetland improvements along the Carson River area. And so throughout the Carson River, they have 11 projects in total. Just one is here in Carson City. And so they came to us in 2014, met with my predecessor, Ron Guzman, walked the property, and throughout the next few months and years, they went out, did site surveys, topographic surveys, wetland surveys, talked with the rancher, and realized that they could, in fact, do a wetlands enhancement in this area. There is a lot of construction equipment out there currently on site, so some of the neighbors were concerned that it was being developed, and we reassured the neighbors this is open space in perpetuity. It was funded, it was 2 acquisitions funded by the State of Nevada Question 1 program, the Conservation and Resource Protection Grant. And so the project is under construction. It'll finish just in probably another week or 2. And John Ranlett with Ducks Unlimited is here to tell you more about the project. John?
Thanks, Ann. John, come on up.
Yeah, good evening. John Ranlett for the record from Ducks Unlimited. And sorry, I have a head cold, so I might cough a little bit. But yeah, as Ann described it well, we've been working with the city since maybe 13 or 14, and the acquisition that took place first on the SERPA property and then later on the, help me out here. No, the Bentley, thank you. Yeah, the Bentley, what's now the Carson Canyon Open Space. We worked with the city to see about leveraging that money, and then went to the North American Wetland Conservation Act, submitted a grant application. We're successful with it, and one of the 11 projects we wanted to do was come back to the Carson City and improve Buzzy's Ranch. And when we saw it, nice wetland property with a bunch of dilapidated flood irrigation infrastructure. And flood irrigated pastures are important to spring migrating waterfowl, shorebirds, waterbirds, and other land birds. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to improve this wetland habitat and also working landscape within the flyway. And so worked with city staff to see if they would be interested, and then met with the rancher, Mickey Anderson, to see if he would be amenable to it. We don't want to kick a rancher off his land and put him out of business. You know, we like working with ranchers and want to improve their properties, improve their ability to irrigate, grow grass, and raise cattle. And so number of meetings with Mickey to figure out what we wanted to accomplish out there that would work with his operation. And we bid the project in July, very wet at the time, and Mickey told us it would be dry come mid-September. Right on schedule, it was dry, but our contractors, the low bidding qualified contractor, he was a little bit more than we could afford, so we met him out there in early October, and he gave us a good number we could work with. Then it rained, and he got behind on his work in eastern Nevada and was going to have a problem meeting schedule. So at that point, we met with our second low bidder, Coons Construction from Carson City here, and able to come to terms with him on a contract. And he's been out working since, I think, early November. And weather's slowed him down a little bit, but he should be finished, like Ann said, this week. My engineer's out tomorrow to meet with him to do a walkthrough and develop a final punch list of items the engineer would like to have addressed, and then he could sign off on it. So we're looking imminently here for the dirt work to be finished, and then at that point we'll have a revegetation contractor out there to do some reseeding on disturbed areas on the site. So you probably saw in the newspaper we met with Ann Knowles from the appeal, whatever. She had some good information out there, and we'd like to have her back in the springtime when she could see it, not looking torn up and put back together. And would be great to have the Open Space Advisory Committee to come out in the springtime with us. But with that, any questions, I'd love to try to answer.
Any questions of John?
John, is there a way you could give kind of a 30,000-foot overview of the site plan? Because I'm unfamiliar with
Sure.
the whole project.
So north, so that'll actually, and go back to sheet 4. So on your far left side is the north end of the property, and then on the far right is east. And how familiar?
I'm familiar with the area.
Okay, so actually, Ann, sheet 3 would be a better overview. So at the very bottom would be Carson River Road, and then where you see sheet 6, there's a inset dashed line. Yeah, right there. That's our entrance into the site. At the very bottom of it is Mickey's Corral area. And so we've improved, there's an old access road there was torn up by some floods and irrigation and cattle trampling. So we've improved the road there. And then to get into the site proper, we've parallel an existing irrigation ditch and have improved the levee top on the irrigation ditch. And then we cross over into the site proper, which is the entirety of sheet 4. And so on the very bottom of sheet 4 is a main so on the far right-hand side of this sheet here is the main water conveyance ditch through the property. Right now, the contractors are finishing regrading that ditch. 2 excavators are working today on that, and they should have the ditch improvements, levee improvements done tomorrow or so and be off the site. But where the hand is there, there's a water There's a water control structure that was installed there to link the pond that's on the right with the pastures on the left. And then where the hand is now, we needed dirt to improve the perimeter levees, and there are two internal levees we've redeveloped, and so we needed dirt to build the levees. And levees may be a misnomer. These are maybe 2 to 3 foot tall berms, 10 foot wide across the top with 3-to-1 back slopes and 5-to-1 front slopes. So just, yay high at the most. And but those are to provide flood irrigation capabilities for each of the 3 pasture units. And then also, it'll provide better site management and site access into the future. But so if you want to, go up to that, right in there, that hatch pattern in this pasture, and then to the pasture to the left, those were borrow areas where we stripped off all the organic vegetation, exposed the dirt, and then harvested the dirt with paddle wheel scrapers to rebuild the levees or berms out on the site. And now all the organics have been respread into those borrow areas. We'll come back in and do a little bit of broadcast seeding and harrowing when it's a little bit drier, so the organics, there's a lot of rhizomatic growth out in the soil. There should be some native seed, but we wanted to put a little bit more seed out there there'll be weeds. When you break ground, you're going to expose it to weed infestation. So wanting to revegetate with all the local sod, but then we're also seeding the borrow areas too where we've disturbed. Let's see. How about going to the middle of the pasture, and that curvilinear feature is a swale. Water will flow from pasture to pasture to pasture through the swale. We went curve. We could have gone a straight line with it, but we borrowed dirt out of the swale also to provide a little bit more dirt for rebuilding the site. And so we like curvy swales rather than straight lines. And so the swales are about 12 foot wide across the bottom. It's 5-to-1 side slope, so it's real gradual, and the cows will be able to traverse the site pretty well. But those are the lower spots within each pasture, and those will grow back more with wetland-dependent species. But there will be some forage in there the cows might like, but it's really going to be cattail tule dominated. So, Ann, next to one of the swales, yeah, right there. That's a wide, we call it a pothole. It's a wide spot in the swale that was also developed to provide dirt for the reconstruction work, but also as a habitat feature. So you'll need to come to the site and it'll make a lot more sense. But it's both a habitat feature, but also designed to provide dirt for rebuilding the levee infrastructure. And then follow that to the far left, Ann. There's a concrete flashboard riser water control structure's been installed there and at 9 other spots on the site. And if you go to sheet 7, okay, no problem. One of the construction plan sheets had details on the water control structures if you're, we could talk offline at some other point.
Well, it's a great overview. Thank you very much.
But it's designed twofold to rebuild the infrastructure for flood irrigation purposes, but also with the borrow features designed around habitat. So, so the rancher should do well with improved ability to manage his water, irrigate, and move his cows around. But then also, wildlife work on the site real well. And right the week in advance of our bid meeting, I went around the site just to see how wet or dry it would be. And wet sites are, you don't get good contractor budget bids on a wet site, but it was real birdy. Lots of neat wetland associated birds out there that day, and they should still persist on the site in the rebuilt once it's rebuilt. So looking forward to seeing it this spring and who shows up. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
But yeah, feel free to contact me through Ann if you'd like.
Any questions of John from the committee? Any public comments or questions? John, we really appreciate it. What we're getting here is a major upgrade of this portion of the ranch from a water management, vegetative management perspective. So from the rancher's perspective, it's a wonderful addition. It has great wildlife benefits and waterfowl benefits, which are obviously the first consideration from a Ducks Unlimited perspective, or a consideration.
A consideration, yeah.
But we really appreciate that because we cannot expect our lessee to do this kind of improvement. Fencing and structures are things we've worked with them on, but this is a real concentrated improvement that I think is really a great investment for Carson City and for our open space program. So we do have other properties along the river that we'd be happy to talk to you about in the future, too.
In the future, indeed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, that's not an action item, so thank you very much, and I hope your head cold gets better with time. Okay, next item, 3B, possible action regarding a possible conservation easement with the Old Woods Ranch LLC and/or Schultz Investments, and discussion on vision, compatibilities, and outcomes with the open space program. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'll begin with the introduction on the location of these properties. We have talked about these properties for several years, but just for orientation, at the bottom of the map is Highway 50 West going up towards Spooner Summit. Right in this area is the Clear Creek interchange and underpass. So the non-colored area in the center is the Horse Creek Conservation Easement. The blue around is Carson City open space. It was also part of the Horse Creek fee title purchase. Old Woods Ranch is 2 parcels, just right next door. And Shoals Investment, there's a couple parcels, but the ones under discussion may or may not be included in this grant application. This is still up for discussion, but there's an 80-acre parcel here, a larger parcel to the east, but only part of that may or may not be part of the conservation easement. Again, those are just some of the continued discussions. Another general area for access is Kings Canyon Road to the north. Okay, that was for the introduction. So in the past, when this item has been in front of the committee and even the Board of Supervisors, it has been on our work plan to pursue a conservation easement. So a conservation easement means we are buying a partial interest in the property. We're not buying fee title. We will not be the owners. What it means is the property owner remains the owner, but we buy whatever rights. Usually what we're interested in is we're buying the development rights for a property. And so why these properties are important for open space is, as you can see by the map, it is surrounded by undeveloped areas, by open space, Carson City open space, and the Forest Service. So it's just wonderful wildlife habitat. It's also at the top of the Clear Creek watershed. Historic values, the Kings Canyon Road is the old Lincoln Highway. The timber, the irrigated pastures. So there's many wonderful attributes to these properties. So the next step in this process on a conservation easement was hiring Nevada Land Trust to help us out. Again, with limited staff time, we hired Nevada Land Trust just to help us through this process. One of the things that they did, they have a questionnaire that they provide to potential, clients to get their feelings about their property, what their interest is in the future. And in this case, Old Woods Ranch LLC is 12 family members in this generation. The next are many, many more. And so trying to talk with 12 family members and trying to understand what their desire is can be a challenge in itself. But what Kevin Hill with Nevada Land Trust will help summarize for you tonight is the family members have realized that in the big picture, they all do share the same family goal, which is similar to us and the Nevada Division of Forestry, which is currently the grant that we're pursuing for this easement. One of the other items that I would like this committee to provide comment on is the building potential. What the family would like to do, I don't have an exact size of the area, 5 or 10 acres, but how much they might be interested in developing and where does that fit in with our goals and our mission with the open space. But at this time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Hill, and he can give you a summary on the questionnaire.
Thank you. Kevin, please come forward.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members. Kevin Hill with the Nevada Land Trust. A little background that Ann already touched on is that they reached out to our entity to help with the preparation of a application for the Forest Legacy Program, which we did. And so part of that due diligence is that we reach out with a landowner questionnaire. So every project that we potentially become involved in, we want to kind of know what's motivating the landowner to either place an easement or fee title. It's important for us to know that beforehand. Typically, it's a little more simple with projects because we have one family that we're dealing with. So this one is definitely interesting because you got to have a lot of family members, and as we know, family members aren't always on the same page. And what was interesting about this questionnaire is, first of all, it's about 8 pages. So if anybody's like me, I'm not real thrilled about filling out an 8-page questionnaire. So the family did a great job in taking the time, not only filling it out, but having a lot of written comments in there as well. So typically, this is confidential information, but I've kind of summarized it. Actually, Ann's staff summarized all the questionnaires. So I kind of chose the ones that had the most hits on it, that had the most agreement, and then we'll talk just a minute about some that maybe there's not as much agreement. But what I found is, and I think Ann and others have found looking through this, is that there's far more agreement than disagreement. There was a key theme of protecting the natural landscape, passing it on to children, preserving open space, creating opportunities to enhance wildlife, scenic, protecting the agricultural resources. The family absolutely recognize the importance of the historic components on site, and they are significant. Creating strong, what was interesting is that there was some agreement on creating strong restrictions to protect these resources. So as part of a conservation easement, there will be some restrictions on the parcel, depending on how it's, which part of the parcel we're talking about. Special features are important. The past and current ranching activities was very important to the family. Wildlife, the forested areas, ponds, creeks, wetland, and as I mentioned, historic resources. There was recognition by the majority of family owners that it's important to connect to other efforts around. Ann mentioned there was Carson City land that was acquired. There was a Horse Creek Ranch conservation easement, or was that fee title? A conservation easement, yeah, in Horse Creek Ranch through Question One program. So there was a recognition of that continuity of protecting a larger space. When we start going into possible future alterations to the property, there was quite a few responses as far as the willingness, at least for maybe some trail building, some tree and vegetation treatment, which I know is already happening on the land out there. There was possible, or the potential for building that Ann talked about. This is where we probably get a little disparity with the comments. With the family members, it ranges from recreational facilities to a family campground to cabins. And so that's the part, I think, where Ann is kind of getting on that 5-acre piece of just kind of seeing what the family wants. But that kind of summarizes what the questionnaire said, what the family came back with, which was really helpful for us. But it's clear that protecting open space, passing it on to future generations is high on the list. And it's got significant environmental attributes. So with that, I can take a question, or I'm here available if you don't have any questions now.
Are there any questions from the committee? Just an observation, our conservation easement that we acquired from Michael Fagan includes the other portion of the meadow. This would bring those two pieces together. That conservation easement does have some restrictions both on open space access as well as on what can be done with the property. There are 3 or 2 building sites on that property. I think there are 3.
On the conservation easement, there's one. One of the items, and this is all really important information for the discussion, when we were working with Michael Fagan on his conservation easement, the total size of the property is 201 acres. And the easement took us 5 years to even just work on the easement. And probably the largest item of discussion regarded development. And I think Mr. Fagan went back and forth. Was it homes? Was it a lodge? And this committee did not support a lodge on the property. They just did not feel it fell within our mission of protecting the property. And so in the end, there were 2 building envelopes. Actually, one large parcel was divided, and then on 2 smaller parcels, building envelopes were excluded from the easement altogether. So in total, we only have an easement on 175 acres, and so Michael Fagan or future property owners can do whatever they want because it's not included in the easement. But on the easement, we have 1.
And as I recall, the building envelopes were at the very edge or actually almost above the meadow area.
That is
So-
correct, yes.
The meadow is really the resource that catches your eye and is really, I think, a valuable consideration. You know, the Woods Ranch folks have been pretty patient and, you know, in trying to see if we could find some common ground, and we appreciate that. At the same time, we're trying to, I guess, find the balance of meeting the family goals and what a partner, a financial partner might require. And of course, from our perspective, I think we have to be very careful about our involvement with regard to somehow fostering development in a way that's negative as far as the preservation of a very valuable and beautiful piece of property. So finding that balance, I think, if I'm hearing correctly, is still, the framework of that balance is out there, but the details are yet to be defined. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization of it. I think there's a couple ways in an easement that you could go here is if it's if this 5-acre piece, and you mentioned Michael Fagan's piece, if there is, you can either exclude it from the easement altogether, which happened on Horse Creek, or you can include it with restrictions. So typically, I mean, the best case scenario is that you include this area with restrictions, because then there's some control over it. So without, if you exclude it, then it opens it up to, potentially, they can pretty much the landowner can pretty much put what they want there, which might affect the character of the remaining property. So that becomes kind of the issue to resolve.
Well, it would seem to me that keeping it in the easement with restrictions that the current family is comfortable with might be a fair way to kind of put sideboards on it for the future, as well as meet some of their goals as far as the family preservation aspects of it. I don't know, but
I think you're right, and I think that's where the negotiation piece comes in, is just ideally it's restricted, but it's acceptable to the family.
Donna?
Yeah, has the 5-acre parcel in question been identified?
The 5 acres itself is not a parcel, but yes, where they want to have a camp is. And it is currently an area where they do use to camp.
Okay, and so where is that on the map?
And at the next meeting, I can bring photos as well. Roughly, like Mr. Fagan's parcels, the non-shaded area is a meadow, and so where they do camp is outside the meadow, and it is covered by trees, so right in the forest.
Just one last
Yes.
comment. It's not unusual in a conservation easement to have, for example, to simplify A, B, and C zones, let's say. So A might be the forested area to the west. B might be this homestead area, if you will, or it might include this 5 acres where there might be cabins or whatever the landowner wants. C might be the meadow area. And so each zone would have its own specific restrictions related to it. So it's not unusual in Zone B to allow for additional development. It just depends on the character of that, what's the magnitude of that development, and is it affecting zones A and C. So it's not unusual to have potential development approved as part of an easement. It just depends on like I said, the character of it.
Are there any public comments? Mr. Lurie, welcome to the meeting.
My name is Carlo Lurie, resident of Douglas County and representing Carson Valley Trails Association. So I didn't hear any discussion of trails in this project. I know that trails are often included in conservation easements, and I would encourage the board to condition approval on some type of public trail easement. There's been an explosion of trail use in Carson City and new trails being built. The same with the Carson Valley. There's been a lot of trails built in the Carson Valley. And if you look at that map, there's only one way to connect the trails from the Carson Valley to Carson City, and it's through the underpass. And to get from that underpass to other legal trails in Carson City, the best alignment would go through some of those conservation easements. So I would encourage the board to contemplate encouraging trail easements in those conservation easements. So,
Thank you, Carlo. Any questions of Carlo? Okay. Ann, you're looking for feedback from the committee on the concept and where we are and what direction or elements the committee might feel are reasonable going forward? Is that where we are at this point?
That is correct. That is some of the direction, comments, feedback. At this time, there are a few members from the family here. If they're interested and willing to speak on record, that would be good. If not, if they can even just hear some input from the committee as we take this back for discussion. Some of the other items I did want to bring up for the committee, as your staff report says, on January 10th, several of us are meeting again, but this time with the Community Development Department, and they will help identify also from a zoning perspective what can and can't happen on these properties. And also in the audience is Heather Geiger with Nevada Division of Forestry. And as a granting agency, if she had anything else to add about restrictions from her perspective, that might be helpful to the committee.
Okay, let's start with Heather. Are there any particular things? Please.
So I would just add maybe that in terms of the
I'm
funding.
sorry, Heather, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, for the record, this is Heather Geiger, Nevada Division of Forestry. And from our perspective, as Kevin pointed out, that the area where the family would like to develop some sort of family camp, that will probably be the biggest restriction on our end, because the Forest Legacy Program, which is the funding source that they're interested in working with, has pretty strict requirements in terms of before we submit an application, they really want to see that firmed up, so they would like to see a solid plan there. So that'll need to be negotiated before we would actually be able to apply for funding. So I think that's probably the biggest concern at this point on our end. But other than that, we think it's a wonderful project, and we're very supportive of submitting an application on behalf of Carson City Open Space and the Nevada Land Trust for the property.
Great, thank you. Any questions of Heather? Okay. Woods Ranch representatives, would you like to come up and speak or answer questions, or would you prefer us to talk about you without your chance to respond? I don't mean that in a negative way.
I hope not, no.
I think we need to kick around some of the questions that have come about, and I'd love to give you a chance to give us your thoughts so that we'd have that in the context of our discussion.
Okay. For the record, I'm Charlie Gifford. I'm one of the members of the family that owns the Woods Ranch. And in terms of what we might want to develop there or not, we've had this ranch it's been in the family for 100 years. It's always been a working ranch. And we've always talked about maybe having a cabin there or something in the future, but we never seem to get around to it. So in looking at a conservation easement, the fact that we're going to be doing this in perpetuity and that we're going to be locking things up and then handing it down to the next generation, we have to be pretty responsible about what we do. So one of the main things is that we don't want to set it up so that the future generations have any kind of heavy financial burden on it. And that's part of the reason, that's one of the main reasons for going into the conservation easement, is to set up an endowment to hand down with the ranch to help them keep the ranch and preserve the ranch. As far as, we've been tossing around a lot of things, what we might do there in terms of a family camp or a family recreational facility, and we are, it would be something similar to Horse Creek Ranch in that what Horse Creek Ranch conservation easement allows for is like 2 homes and those two upper parcels, and then one 3,500 square foot home on the conservation easement itself on the 121 acres. And of course, nothing's been built like that, but it's anybody who buys it can do that. Well, it'd be the same thing for us, is that what we're looking for is some kind of package that we decide, and it would be in the form of not to exceed. So when we come up with a plan, whether it be for cabins or just a family campsite, it would be, something, the terms would be not to exceed, because it's, in all likelihood, we might not build anything there. It might be like Horse Creek Ranch, even though it has the ability to build stuff, it just hasn't happened. We just want to make sure that what we hand down to the next generation, that they have some latitude of what they might do with the property. But the overall thing is to preserve the ranch pretty much as it is. And we've been caretakers of our ranch and also Horse Creek Ranch for a couple of their owners now. So that's kind of the outlook of the family, is just to preserve it, hand it down, and not place any financial burden unduly on the next generation.
I really appreciate your thoughts and your sharing that. In a general sense, realizing nobody knows quite what the details are, does the elements that we would have to live with within our grant application and potentially whatever you're meeting in with Carson City Planning coming up in January, those parameters are obviously outside of our control, but would have a bearing on what you would like to do. But does it seem from a family perspective like you would be able to, from what you understand at this point, you would be able to live with the kinds of restrictions that we would have either through the Forest Legacy Grant or Carson City zoning, planning, that kind of thing? I mean, do you see any major fatal flaws at this point?
No, because what we ask for will be considerably less than what you provided, I believe, for Horse Creek Ranch. We don't want to build we're not looking at building a private lodge with a heliport like was once suggested for Horse Creek Ranch. So we've never, anything we build will be tucked away and with to allow us some amenities that we don't have now to just help, just to enjoy the ranch more, instead of it just being totally a working ranch that we commute to work the meadow and everything. So it'll be certainly within the parameters of conservation reserve, which we are, that's what we are.
Okay, because one thing we have to remember is you guys are maintaining the meadow. The reason the meadow looks so good is because it's been under management, and we don't want to lose that ability for you to want to continue to do that, because I think that's in open space's best interest as well as your own. So hopefully, there's plenty of room there to make it work, so you and the members of the family in the future will still feel good about having, in effect, an area that, at least in the summertime, is kind of a working operation, or has the ability to be one.
Correct, and it's the big green jewel is what it is, and that's what we're
That's
about.
exactly
is
right.
Keeping it that way.
I don't know if-
That's the intent, is to set it up so the next generation can manage that. And that's the main reason for the conservation easement, really.
And that would be great, because there are lots of folks out there that would love to put a house in the middle of that green jewel, and that's really not, I don't think, at least from the perspective of open space, what we see in our investment that's already been made in a portion of that area, the upper part. I don't know if any of you remember the photograph that Jay Aldrich had on the phone book about 3 years ago. It was a view of that meadow looking south, and it's just a beautiful gem, just like you say. Committee questions, comments? Any other public comments?
Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So generally speaking, is the family amenable to a trail? It would be along the most likely area that we would be considering for a trail would be within the forested area along the edge of the west side of the meadow.
There's a problem there. It's like, that's something, I don't know about the logistics of it, but that's, you almost have to cross the creek and irrigation ditches. And the same thing with Horse Creek. I'm not too sure where you think a trail might go, but if you're trying to connect it to Kings Canyon, there's some sensitive areas that you couldn't possibly put the trail over the irrigation ditches, particularly in Mike Fagan's Horse Creek Ranch, that upper ditch. It's been there for 150 years, but it couldn't take any traffic. It's something that's rather fragile. So it would have to go way up above that, above where the weir is. So it's pretty steep, so I'm not too sure. Somebody'd have to show me. I'd have to see what where they propose a trail might be. But the geography of it is tough, and we wouldn't want them to come through the meadow area. So that's,
Is the concept of a trail something that could be worked out from your perspective within the parameters of maintaining irrigation and drainage and that sort of thing?
I think if it's possible, and we get the family together on it, then that's something that we can certainly look at. But I can, from what I know and what I want to see, and spending a lot of time on that ranch, the geography of it's going to make it difficult. But I have to see exactly where they're talking about.
And have we, at the staff level, looked at that at all in terms of that linkage?
Maybe very, very little we have, just so we could ask if it could be part of the question. But to maybe add a little bit of an answer to Member Emberson's question, the Horse Creek Conservation Easement does not allow public access. And so continuing through Old Woods Ranch, going up through that direction, at least currently would not be an option. With a new owner, maybe there would be another access easement, but currently the answer would be no.
Well, we do own property, though, above the meadow, right?
That is correct, yes.
So a trail across the property that we own as open space could conceivably connect through the Woods Ranch property if we could find a reasonable location that was acceptable to everyone.
Correct. Putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, I'll walk the committee and the public through this. So right at the Clear Creek interchange and underpass to the north side, I think it's about 30 acres, 35 acres owned by the state. To the east of that is 20 acres owned by Michael Fagan. That is currently the parcel we're looking to acquire. You can see almost both of those are significant for us to get any trail connection at all. Michael Fagan's right in this area on that 20 acres does have a sufficiently flat area to get a trail. We can, because we have the property to the north, can continue up to the north and connect with Kings Canyon. But as Charlie said, the topography on the site is very steep. It can be done. Many folks have been on the Ashta Kings Trail. It does cross some very steep areas and canyons, and just set Jeff Potter loose and he'll find a way. But ideally, I'm just putting this out here, ideally, somehow if we can connect going to the east, this topography is much gentler, gentle slopes, and because it's a lower elevation, a trail could be used for a longer period through the year.
Where does it go from your hand?
From this area can go in several directions. Right down here are the roads to Voltaire Canyon. Right across the Shoals Investments property, there is a road, I think it's gated when it approaches Highway 50. I would not recommend anyone driving it in a full-size vehicle because, as Charlie also mentioned on Old Woods Ranch, a lot of the soils in here are decomposed granite. Very slippery, there's just no stability to these soils. But there's a lot of roads and trails right in this area. Right here in blue was the Hutchinson acquisition. We do own that, Carson City Open Space. It is on a hilltop as well. So I would, without looking at it, initially, it would not be my recommendation to come up to our high point, but if we can work with the Forest Service and skirt around on lower elevations, then we could connect with Kings Canyon somewhere in that area.
Yeah, it seems to me that with our history of acquisitions in this area and the potential for connection to what's going on south of Highway 50, we really need to be sure that we have viable linkages and viable ways to make those linkages work. I think Carlos' point is really well taken. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Any public comments? Jennifer, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Is there any utilities on site?
No, cows.
Okay. So for the future development, I realize you don't know exactly what that would look like for your family, but do you anticipate needing utilities, and what utility corridors would go through the property to get to that location, and what would be the impact on the land?
We would most likely not bring in electricity and utilities. It's its own little ecosystem. We could live with that. We've got the creek and we've got ditches for
Okay.
water.
So you're looking more battery, solar powered, things like that to
Right.
serve the cabins or whatever would be
Right.
built? Okay.
And I don't
Thank
think
you.
anybody in the family's mentioned bringing in power lines. but-
Okay. I just wanted to try to picture what you anticipated, and if, utilities had to be cut through that land, and, where would that go?
We're interested in keeping it as pristine as it is. That's our kind of goal.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other comments or questions? Okay, what's our feedback?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Did
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We have a number of things that we've talked about. The potential for linkage and trails. It sounds like we may have some alternatives that don't necessarily directly affect at least the westerly side of this property, the Kings Canyon side, but that may be something to be looked at as part of any kind of final consideration. Are we comfortable with, as it's been described, a pretty rustic potential for some development as part of the conservation easement, given the parameters that have been outlined here? Is that something that, I think what we're looking at here is trying to provide information for the grant application for the needs of the Nevada Division of Forestry in the legacy grant process, and to make sure that we're not coming up with something the family isn't aware of or doesn't agree with at this point. And so I think we're sort of brainstorming, but we're also giving them parameters that I would expect we would plan to live with coming back in a grant application should we get to that point or receive a grant. So with that, what kind of thoughts do we have? Margie?
Well, I've been quiet too long. This is, I don't have to introduce myself, I guess. I have a couple of thoughts. I'm thinking about the Pathways Master Plan and what is included in that. And I'm also thinking about the future of the property. And I don't know if this is something the family would be interested or something we would even want to ask. But if you were going to do some development on that property, would it be unreasonable to ask that it be kept in historical context with the beginnings of the ranch, so that it had a feel if it did allow any public access, which the Horse Creek Ranch doesn't, if public access were allowed at all, it would be nice for them to look off in the distance and kind of feel like maybe they were moving back in time 100 years or something like that. Is that even something reasonable to request or think about in this process?
What would our request be? How would you phrase it?
I would ask that it be kept that any building be kept in the historical context of the time the ranch was established, around 1905. Wasn't that when it was first started, was 1905?
No, I think it's more like about 150 years old. It's been in our
Okay.
family for 100 years, since 1916.
Okay.
With John Woods, I don't know the exact date, is it 1870s or 1880s?
Okay, so as the original was during if we could maintain the historical context of the Clear Creek mining issue, things that were going on and that sort of thing. I don't know if it's even possible. I'm throwing it out as a potential for discussion. Just if we're going to do if development is allowed in the long term, can we make sure that it's not some huge concrete or granite structure with a really big star on the roof?
We would never build anything like that. And it's like, and where we're looking at, or where our family recreation or retreat area is, whatever you want to call it, is it's kind of hidden from the meadow even by trees and stuff. So it's a portion of the upper 50 acres, and it's just exactly where it is. We haven't defined it, and it could be 5 acres, it could be. We don't know for sure. And like I say, what it would be a plan and not to exceed, and not necessarily ever even built, but just allowed for, just like with the Horse Creek Ranch. It's just the 2 cabins that are there. There's not a house. There's not the 3,500 acre house that's allowed on the conservation easement, and there's not the 4 houses that could be on the north end. So this generation might not build anything, but we have to leave it open for the next generation, so that it's not just a working ranch. There's some amenities and things that they can enjoy. That's how, how else are we going to keep them interested in it?
Charlie, do you know if there's any literature, gray literature, anything that's been published, anything of that sort about the history of the family? Because speaking to Margie's question, you could build a context from which you could then try to tie some language together about how the restrictions of keeping with the historic feel of a property, but you still have to have a baseline. We have to have some sort of context in place from which to evaluate it from.
Well, there was a fellow, Mike Drews, who visited the ranch, and he was with somebody attached to the Sierra Club.
He's my old boss.
Pardon?
Great Basin Consulting, I think is the name of his firm.
That's what it was. And he was pretty impressed with some people call it junk, in our yard there. In fact, he was very impressed, because what we have is all kinds of old John Deere horse-drawn tractors. They're metal, cast iron pieces. And he was pretty excited about some of our artifacts. And the idea was brought up of perhaps another grant, some kind of cultural aspect grant, to help us build a barn to put all these antiques in. And you do that with the idea that you allow the public on access a few times a year, I guess, to see this old historic family ranch. So that's interesting to us as well. So yes, indeed, it does have its history. And also, in the Comstock era, there was a shingle mill there on our property. There used to be a lot more cedars, but when they went through and pretty much clear cut everything, so they were making shingles. It was a shingle mill. We still, in fact, in that area, we still uncover oyster shells, because that was a delicacy back in those days. So there is some history, and yeah, we'd be interested in we think. We haven't really discussed this much with the family, but that was something new that was brought up. But indeed, it is a historic family ranch, and we'd like to absolutely keep it in that, keep that atmosphere. So anything we built, if we come to cabins or whatever, it's going to be one thing away from that area. And no, we'd like to think we have pretty good taste in keeping the tone of that ranch as it is.
I just wanted to add, exactly your comment and question there, Margie, is at least some of the things that I'd like to try to pull out. I'm not looking for all the answers tonight, because we do need to go back with the family with discussion, but those are the type of questions. Is it possible? How would we define it? That sort of thing.
You talk about shingles, talk to the fire department about whether you can do that, so we may run into conflicting, goals or regulations, but the context, I think, of maintaining something that looks like the period and obviously is more modern from a user standpoint, no metal building type of thing. I think some of those parameters could be pretty easily worked out and not be onerous to the owners. Any other comments or questions? Public comments or questions? Okay, this is a two-parcel agenda item, if I understand correctly. Ann, is there anything further on the Schultz portion that we should talk about before we consider finalizing any committee thoughts?
I don't think so. At this time, any of the potential development or questions has all referred to the Old Woods Ranch area.
Is that saying we need to talk more about the Schultz portion, or we've covered it with the discussion we've
I
had?
think at this point, we don't need to discuss anything in addition for the Schultz investments.
Okay, I guess one observation I would have from some of the discussion in the hand moving across the 1 inch equals a mile map would be the concept that we don't lose sight of the potential for trail connections in resource compatibly, considered areas. Obviously, we don't want to be onerous, but at the same time, I think those connections are pretty valuable as part of our mission. So to me, that would be something we can work out, hopefully, if the desire is there. But if there's a desire to not have any access on any basis, then we probably have concerns.
I'd add to that, Bruce, that I think that this connection between Carson Valley and Carson City is an extremely important one, because really there's not that many options for connecting the two valleys. And so, you look at the front page of Carson City's website, and it's Jeff Potter on a mountain bike. I understand that, from Charlie's perspective, maybe that the topography, I'm not completely familiar with the area, but the topography might be a challenge to get a trail there. But if the opportunity presents itself and we can do it in a way that's respectful to the family and that meets the family's wishes as well, I think that we should jump on it. That being said, if we can cool our horses and continue a trail through the Schultz property because it's easier, then I think that's probably a better option rather than rushing the connection. But I do feel that the connection is an extremely important one, especially for many perspectives. But from the economy to just tourists bringing tourists in to the huge events that we're getting in Carson City now, the epic trails. That's my 2 cents on the issue.
Okay, have we given staff and the Woods Ranch LLC folks enough feedback, and are we seeing any major issues from NDF's perspective on our discussion here today? We don't want to be moving people in a direction that is going to be a problem.
This is Heather Geiger again. And no, I think that you guys are correct. I would like to say that NDF supports the idea of public access as well. It's been expressed to us by our Forest Service liaison that greatly enhances the application and makes it more likely to get funded. So if we can ensure that there's a level of public access, that makes it a better project on our end as well. So just to reiterate that.
Great, thank you, Heather. Last chance for any comment? Donna?
I just want to I want to plant a little seed for the far-off future as we're talking about connectivity between Carson Valley and Carson City and utilizing that narrow little tunnel underneath Highway 50 for cars, horses, bicyclists, runners, and hikers. I think I would like to see us at least start thinking about working with wildlife organizations and look at the potential for a wildlife corridor across Highway 50, either under or over it, which would also be a trail. I think there'd be more funding available then for us for that connection. And I think it would be an important wildlife connectivity. I mean, Highway 50 cuts them off. The wildlife has really no way to get across from north to south. So I just kind of want to plant that little seed.
Thank you. If you driven on 95 between Wells and Jackpot, you've seen a couple of those in Nevada. NDOT does know what they are. So there's some food for thought. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Do you need any further action, Ann?
I'm sufficient with tonight's discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is sort of related. Possible action, review of open space opportunities, maps, and discussion on the possible property transactions with Schultz Investment. And then there's a series, Washoe Hillview Properties, State of Nevada, Gerald and Luann Ham. And this touches a number of different areas. I don't know how you want to handle it, piece by piece, or what's your pleasure, Ann?
I will start with one map, which covers the parcels all to the west and then lead into the fourth, which is to the north. I'll start with Schultz Investments, since we've talked about this parcel, but on the west side, this is a parcel to the east side, 220 acres currently. It depends on how they divide it or not. And this has been on our work plan in the past for discussion. It is on here tonight, again, for further direction from the committee. This property is currently listed for sale. I think the asking price is $2 million for the 220 acres. And the direction, the map in front of you is our open space opportunities map. So everything in yellow was identified at one time for acquisition by open space, but that doesn't always necessarily mean it needs to be us. And so in this example, it is staff's recommendation to ask the Forest Service to acquire this property. They are the adjacent landowners, and when we talk about consolidated land ownership, it makes sense. I have had initial discussions with the Forest Service. They do like the concept, and BLM as well, of acquiring private properties that are adjacent next to theirs. They don't like in holdings. And so they do like the possible opportunity of acquisition for them. And as Member Emerson identified, this is wonderful wildlife habitat. That vegetation up there for mule deer in particular is just wonderful. But the Forest Service has said they've identified their first priorities for the next 2 rounds. Their primary source of funding is the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act. They have identified their next 2 priorities, so this would be down the line. Together, we have not been on the site. Maybe they have, because they have the land adjacent to it. And so at this point on that one, I would like, if the committee believes this property should be preserved in open space one way or another, it is staff's recommendation to ask your approval to continue those conversations with the Forest Service on this one.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions of Ann from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this? Okay, so your request of us on this particular Schultz parcel is that you continue discussions with the Forest Service with our blessing for them to consider acquiring it. We could probably create some trail connectivity planning and things like that might really help in the SNPLMA funding side, and also kind of coordinate with what we were talking about earlier with the discussion with Old Woods Ranch.
Yes, that's all correct. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to take these one at a time? Do you want to deal with them all at once? How would you like to do that?
Let's maybe all at once, because I think there are some folks in the audience that would like to talk in general for all of them. So if we can circle back around.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
The next item property is the state of Nevada. This has also been on our work plan just as a concept that was out there recently. It was, and Chairman Scott might have to refresh my memory on this, it was never really identified on our open space opportunities map, maybe because we always thought it was owned by the state, and it always would be. But in the last legislature, the governor directed the Nevada Division of State Lands to sell these properties, and the funding would come back down to Carson City and fund the rehabilitation of the Stewart Indian School. So there is direction to sell these properties. They are school trust properties, and they are supposed to sell them at the highest and best use. Some of the interest here, currently there is the Clear Creek Trail, starts down on Jacks Valley Road, about 7 or 8 miles down, and ends right at these properties. So it's a kind of a dead-end trail to some aspect. On the Douglas County line, the Clear Creek Golf Course was built and approved for development with the stipulation that they would build a trailhead. And some other folks in the audience can help me with the history on that, of where that trailhead could have been or should have been. But on these properties owned by the state, it's kind of the perfect location to build a trailhead. I don't know how much money was put aside, but it was a condition of their approval. And so I don't know if I'm asking really open space if you have an interest, and this is 100 acres, if there's an interest here to purchase 100 acres for open space, or if there's a direction from this committee to talk with state lands about dividing the parcels that we need to get a trailhead and trail. Some of the other background on this, recently, about a year ago, these properties did come to the Board of Supervisors to divide them from 20-acre parcels down to 5 to potentially increase the value. And our Board of Supervisors said no, because by dividing these parcels, it does not meet our requirements for developments, which requires 2 ways of ingress and egress. And so at that point, that kind of stopped further discussion. But again, the governor did say sell these properties. And so it's on the table because we almost can't and don't want to lose this opportunity for a trailhead and trail connection to Douglas County.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, we've periodically run into the case where state lands owns property, but their goal is to maximize the value, and so it creates difficulties sometimes in the acquisition without really giving it a lot of thought. This is the old Job Corps Center, and I'm not sure what we'd do if we owned the Job Corps Center. Certainly we would turn it over to Parks because it's not open space, but it's you know, my sense would be, is there a way to leverage the responsibility of the Clear Creek Golf Course with some kind of an easement acquisition or some kind of a way to take advantage of some of the amenities that are already there that would help create a trailhead, and maybe acquire a portion of it, or maybe consider some kind of a way that we could establish a trailhead, which I think would really be important at that location. And there's already some infrastructure that, you know, road-wise and area-wise that you might utilize. And it's the common point basically with Douglas County. So I would think, short of acquiring 100 acres, you know, if there's some way we could figure out a way to do it, that the ability to acquire trail access and potentially trailhead acquisition would be important goals. I would hate to see us acquire more land to manage than we could possibly handle, but at the same time, that might be a way to facilitate some development that would benefit state lands and still get the goals of, you know, they're not going to get high density up there no matter what. And so if we could get a trailhead and a trail linkage, we get Douglas County and Carson City connected, which is really important. And to me, that would be a way to maybe try to consider moving forward. The other thing is the letter from the chairman of it was Natural Resources, I guess, Senator Gokachia, that you sent us this afternoon, seems to recognize at least the value of the open space, or the value of what's going on up there. So I'm not sure how that fits with the governor's priority, but hopefully we could find a way to blend those.
Just for clarification, we're only talking about the property on the south side of the freeway, not on the north, right?
We should look at the property on the north as well, because that is the property adjacent to the interchange, yes.
Okay, and on the property on the south side, that was the Conservation Corps area at one time. Is there any infrastructure on it, or it's just bare land at this point?
The buildings were torn down several years ago. There is old, broken, torn up roads leading up to the foundations.
Okay. And, to kind of piggyback on what Chairman Scott said, I would really like to see getting the golf course involved in helping with whatever we're going to do, a choir or whatever, and Douglas County, because it's right on their border, and it's definitely to their benefit, because I know Douglas County wants at least the CPTA wants the trailhead there. And I think I agree. It's really important that somehow or another we get access to this land. And the more people we can get involved in helping us do that, the better.
Any other questions or comments of the committee, from the committee?
I have a comment.
Margie?
I've been, as some of you know, I've been watching that property for, seems like a pretty long time now. And I'm pleased that it looks like there's an opportunity of freeing it up from the state of Nevada. But at the same time, we really need that property to develop to have a chance of developing connectivity. Because of the other properties south of the freeway, I don't think are going to be available to us. At the same time, I don't want to see us necessarily buying that piece of property because of some of the management concerns that would go with it. So I'm kind of thinking it would be useful to keep dialogue open and convince whoever is interested in the property that it would be in their best interest to work with us and work on a trail interchange, that sort of thing. So just my thought on it.
Other comments, thoughts? Any?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Margie, that we should, at some level, I guess worst case scenario, the land gets developed and it gets split into one residential dwelling per 20 acres, which it's zoned for. If there was some stipulation put in place, and I don't know how this works, that we would have an easement through that property for a trail, specifically for a trail, well, then it's kind of win-win.
Any public comment? Jennifer? Oh, Carlo. Go ahead, Jennifer, while he's coming up.
Just real quick, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We haven't had this conversation with state lands, but I wonder if they would entertain the possibility of doing like a relocatable trail easement. So that way it'd be secured before they actually go through with the sale of the property. Then we could work with the future owner on alignment and where that trail would actually go. And then we could have that trail alignment, kind of guaranteed in place rather than hoping that the next property owner would be willing to work with us. So it might be a conversation we could have with state land, see what opportunities are, then they can still divest the property, and we could even look at doing a relocatable easement with a certain acreage, maybe for the trailhead location as well. I mean, you can be creative with those.
I actually was in a meeting with State Lands with the Eagle Valley Trails Committee just about a year ago, and when we were talking about not just this area, but several other areas for the trails, and they were adamant, It was right after the Board of Supervisors had denied them the zoning change that they had requested, so the attitude was rather inflexible. And they just said, that piece is off the table. We will not discuss it. Now we've got the legislature having kind of pushed them in the other direction, so I'm not really sure what their attitude would be. But we now have some backing from the legislature to help us, so that just kind of as an FYI.
I think, to me, Jennifer, that's a great idea because it might allow for some common ground with the supervisors and state lands to the benefit of open space. And that might be a way that we could work that. Carlo, you're standing there. Please come up.
Thank you again, Carlo Lurie with Carson Valley Trails Association. So I can offer a little bit of perspective and then also make my comments about the project. Developing a trail is typically a multi-year process. I say multi-year, sometimes multi-decade, but the trail planning here, the trail that goes from Jacks Valley to Clear Creek started probably close to 10 years ago. And at the time, we had a handshake agreement with state lands to complete the trail on their parcel so that we could have trail access from the Clear Creek Golf Course Road, I believe it's called. Not to get political, but their priorities changed, and as been stated already, they decided to deny the trail easement in the hopes of being able to increase the value of the property. So that's where we are. The trail that we built with easements through both public and private easements through Douglas County ends on the Forest Service parcel at the border of the state lands project. So I've walked it. It's 1,000 feet from Forest Service to the road. There is now a social trail there, but of course it can't be promoted. It can't be advertised. And I'll bring up something else. I have friends who own property in Carson City in the Clear Creek Canyon, and what happens is people will come off the Highway 50 looking for the trailhead. Because it's not signed, because there's no legal space there for trailhead, they won't know, and they'll continue to drive down Clear Creek onto the private road to the detriment of the Carson City residents that live there. So my comment is that it's critical that we complete this project. It's been over 2 years that the trail's been completed. Soon it'll be 3 years. And we don't have a way for the public to access the trail from the north end. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. Are there any other public comments? Yes.
As with Carlo, I'm Jeremy Volich, and I'm with the Carson Valley Trails Association, and I know many of you here, and I can pretty much answer all your questions on that parcel from the history perspective. Carlo mentioned in 2008, 9, and 10, we met on site with state lands, and we had an agreement that that trail would be located on the southwest part of that parcel. And the agreement wasn't directly with the Carson Valley Trails, it was with the U.S. Forest Service. They would not accept our payment to build the trail, which was $50-some thousand, unless state agreed with the Forest Service that they would allow the trail to be built there. As Carlo mentioned, their plans changed over the course of the years and have since said, we want to wait till the zoning change happens, which, as you know, was denied. So I don't know where their position is, if they want to keep going that way to get their zoning change. In 2009, NDOT got involved. They wanted to build a big retention basin there on the property right where the trailhead was going to be. State lands asked me to work with NDOT to see if the trailhead could be part of that together. And it made absolute sense because it's just a big barren area which would collect water, and that's where the trail would go, and that would be perfect for equestrian access too. And of course, the obvious connection potential to the north, to Ash Kings Trail, was all part of this as well. And this previously was already on the trails plan for Carson City and Douglas County. So we had these agreements. The Forest Service would not even accept our payment for the funds until state lands agreed that the trailhead would go in. So we paid for the trailhead We paid for the environmental assessments. 2-3 years went by, we got that approved. We built the trail, and at that point, that's when state lands came in and said, no, no more, we're not gonna allow it anymore. Because of these, the different perspectives that's come down with the new governor, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not directly a fault of, the individuals working there. But we're at a standstill right now. And I guess, I'm not sure, I hear Carson City maybe thinking about purchasing this property. You only need 1.5 acres, 2 acres for a trailhead, 1/4 acre for a 10-foot easement for 1,000 feet of trail to complete this. So you don't need all this property. Clear Creek Tahoe is obligated to build the trailhead, to pay for the trailhead, but they can't do it until state land says yes. So they're in a wait mode. And I know Clear Creek Tahoe, I personally have worked for them. I've built 7 miles of private trails through my own company on their property. They will not allow a public trail on their private development, so that is not an option. But they are ready to build the trailhead right now. And 2 months ago, I had the design for it. I'm not really in agreement with the design because it's on the southeast part of the interchange. And for those of you that know the area, you have to cross the road. And to have public access across the road with horses, bikes, hikers on what's going to be 300 homes roughly on Clear Creek, plus all the new homes there, and then all the business with the golf course and the clubhouses. There's gonna be a lot of traffic there. I still feel personally that it needs to be on the southwest side where it was originally agreed with all parties at that time, which include the Nature Conservancy, Washoe Tribe, the private landowners, Carson City, state of Nevada, Douglas County. So to me, a lot of it is keeping the integrity and the trust, the trustworthiness that what happened at that time, to keep it over there. I'm not against it being on the southeast side if that happens, but I feel like for safety, that's gonna be a big issue, especially if we were to get connection to the north. And of course, you already have connection to the south, and there's gonna be more formal connection up to Spooner Summit as well. So this is gonna be a major mecca potential for public access. So you have to look long-term. And it's unfortunate that when the tunnel was built, it didn't already provide a potential for a little safer public access as far as hiking and biking and horse riding goes. So that is still going to be an issue, I think. But I think keeping public access on the southwest side is going to be the safest, most logistical location for public access there. So I just wanted to kind of reassess here what it seems like what I'm hearing from people about trying to look at the connectivity and looking long-term at this. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I've got a whole history and maps and things like that too that I can discuss later on the side. So I don't know. Thank you.
Any questions? What's the status of the NDOT detention basin?
Well, about in 2010, 11, the state lands denied, they removed that project. So NDOT had plans to build a retention basin on the southwest side, but I wasn't directly a part of that. But because of this change that was going on with state lands of looking at possibly changing the zoning, they didn't want any further encumbrances on the property, which means they don't want infrastructure of any kind, whether it's just a retention basin and a place for people to park, for example. So NDOT was then forced to build all these small retention basins up and down the highway, as you probably have noticed over the past several years. These little outlets on the south side of the highway when you're going down, that NDOT has been forced to work within their property. So instead of having a couple big ones, there was going to be one right at Clear Creek Interchange and one more big one down at the bottom where it connects to Highway 395. That one got scrapped because of the whole new interchange. That's a whole nother subject. But they've been squished down, the little ones up and down the highway. So they've already built their retention basin within their property. So if you're familiar with that area and you're parked there at the southwest side of the interchange, you'll see the retention basin, but it's all on NDOT property, and it's way, way too small for public access. And I've approached NDOT. We've discussed about the possibility of trying to get vehicles there. It's just not physically possible to park people there and park them safely. So right now, the trail ends 1,000 feet away. People do still park there. State Land is aware of it. Some of their own employees use the trail system. There's often cars parked there, but most people, of course, access it from Jacks Valley because that's the legal formal access, and we are not permitted, nor are we unethical enough to advertise it as an access point. So we do not advertise that as a public access point, even though those people that know about it do use it right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Iris, can we condemn the property for public benefit?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, any other public comment on the Clear Creek parcel? Feedback to staff on Clear Creek. Any thoughts?
I'd just like to reiterate that I think we should really explore working with CVTA, the golf club people, and Douglas County so that we can get the maximum support and dollars for whatever is decided to do. And I agree, you know, if we could just get the trailhead and the easement for the trail, we don't need the rest of the land. And maybe let's pull NDOT into this, even though they've already done what they could, they may still want to do something as far as the southeast portion to get more retention basins in there.
Jennifer?
One thing we might want to consider is maybe not being the sole outright owner of the property and look at partnerships like Member Iverson just mentioned. Maybe we could be a co-owner. I mean, maybe there's some other ways we can go back to the drawing board and look at this in a different way. And I think, you know, Anna and I can try to work and see what our possibilities might be. Because if we did request or even purchased or tried to purchase a relocatable trail easement or those other things, those are encumbering the property and devaluing the property, which is obviously not their goal. So perhaps there's another way we can look at this, and maybe Ann was mentioning maybe the Nature Conservancy, maybe NDOT, maybe some other partners, and we could all have interest and potential partnership opportunities and joint ownership of the land.
Margie?
I like the way you're thinking on that, Jennifer, because I'm not crazy about the notion of buying 100 acres when like Jeremy and Carlos said, we need about an acre and a half, was it? I also know that there's some relatively heavy hitters that have wanted to see this go forward for some time. So I just recommend that you reach out to those people such as the Nature Conservancy and others and find people who can help lobby for this. Is it wrong to say lobby these days? Okay.
Yeah, we've got one right outside. Any other comments from the committee? Okay. Go ahead, Ann, with our next area.
The third property for discussion is owned by Gerald and Luann Ham. Their mailing address is in Placerville, California. This property is located to the south and west of the Timberline subdivision. It has been on the open space opportunities map since the beginning of time, but we've really not discussed this parcel, or these parcels, there's two, in much fashion. They are on the agenda tonight for your discussion because they are for sale right now. There are two parcels. I think only the larger one is for sale, which is 187 acres. Some of the reasons these would be important to the open space program is you can see to the west and to the south, and the blue, it is surrounded by Carson City ownership, and that is either us or Public Works, so undeveloped land to keep it in open space. There are a number of trails. Anyone who has hiked up around Timberline and VC Canyon, these are the trails you're on. You are on private property. The next map, what I provided in your packet, the arrow is showing the center of the parcel. Everything in red are the areas of town that can see this property. So it's a view shed map. So it is a very visible property from throughout town. And one of the other features of this property is wildlife habitat, mule deer migration routes. go through this area. Are there any questions, any direction from the committee? And so the question here, since it is surrounded by open space, is there any interest by this committee for me to reach out, find out more on what the purchase price is, to do an assessment to see how it fits in with our criteria, or any other direction from the committee?
Just FYI, this was also when we were doing the Eagle Valley Trails Committee public comment period. This was definitely one of the properties that Eagle Valley Trails feels is very important to our trail system. And just kind of an FYI, that final report is coming out, we think, next month. We're doing our final review on that. When we approached all the property owners, the only property owner that responded to us at all was this one, and asked that it not be considered for the trails. But what they did indicate to Eagle Valley Trails Committee was that they were interested in selling it to the city, and were even willing to work with us in that if we would pay the taxes on it for the next few years while we found a way to acquire it. So I have no idea what the taxes are. I have no idea what their asking price is. But that's what they did. This was just about a year ago, indicated that. I thought Mark Kimbrough forwarded that to Open Space, that information. If not, he's got it. So at least a year ago, they were interested in working with us.
Thank you, Donna. Any other comments from the committee?
Donna, could you clarify something? When you say, when the property owner asked that Carson City pick up the taxes, what would Carson City get in return?
They would take it off the market. We paid the taxes, and we worked a way of purchasing the property.
But they're not interested in any kind of trail, official trails on their property?
Only if, let's say, at this point, from what I understand, they were more interested in selling it than an easement, but that doesn't mean we can't discuss an easement with them.
Okay, is there any public comment? Jennifer? You're
I'm
almost
sorry.
getting to be public here.
I know, I apologize. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So knowing that we have over 7,300 acres of open space that we're challenged on a daily basis to manage, I think it's really important when you're looking at acquisitions on how we're going to manage it and what would the challenges be when we acquire it. So when I look at this map, I appreciate that it has, everyone in Carson can see it. It's great wildlife habitat. There's also just sort of the cautionary tale. I just counted there's 18 parcels that are adjacent to it. So we would be responsible for maintaining the defensible space behind those 17 homes on this parcel. And how are we going to do that? So that's talking about weeds. It's a forested area. What and how are we going to be able to pay for that? So it's not that I'm against the acquisition. I just want you to be able to consider all of the opportunities and the challenges that go with each of these acquisitions. So just kind of food for thought.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there anyone in the audience, anyone representing the Lambs, or anyone who has anything to add to the discussion? The 20-acre zoning is probably not highly likely to change. Development in a 20-acre zone potentially allows for conditional kinds of things that might result in easements for trails or other things that would not necessarily require acquisition if they were conditioned as part of a development. Properties like this, just like other mountain properties, are beautiful and they really inspire a person, but try to develop them and you better bring your checkbook. And I don't, it may be on the market and it may sell, but it seems to me that the ability for development is going to be somewhat restricted and is going to come back to the city, where we might have a shot at trying to get some conditional kinds of elements that would really help the open space program without trying to acquire it or take on the burden of management. Even though the fire department, with the exorbitant amount of money we pay them every year, is responsible for defensible space for us. At least the way we see it. Okay. Any other comments or any thoughts on that? Jeremy?
To me, it seems like this property is, to me, it's a lower priority than the Nevada, the state lands and the Schultz and Woods Ranch properties. And that's just coming from the trails perspective, connectivity. We already have a way that we can connect Ash Canyon to Kings Canyon. This is a nice little side chute. It's an awesome little trail. I've done it many times, but it doesn't have anything to do with the connectivity because we already have it.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Margie.
I just want to say that I appreciate Jennifer's voice of reason on this, and I'm not real excited about us acquiring more property until we have the necessary human resources and plans and everything else in place to manage what we already have. I like the notion of trails. It looks like a beautiful piece of property. I don't want to look up and see a development there, but I think we should take our time and make sure that we've got some infrastructure in place to manage our existing properties.
Yeah, I think when you look up, timberline is a whole lot more dense than one house per 20 acres. One house per 20 acres is probably going to be relatively limited in its impact on the viewshed, even if it were to develop. But you don't really know. Okay, anything else on this one? All right, moving along.
The last property or group of properties, the last group of properties for discussion is called the Washoe Hillview properties. It's the name on the properties, but they are owned, these properties as well as the entire block up here, owned by Cinderlight. And then this 40-acre parcel, we have a open space kind of lease or reserve, if you will, until 2034, the year 2034. And that was an agreement with Cinderlight and the BLM maybe 15 years ago, that Cinderlight was granted approval to do some operations on this parcel in exchange for open space protection on 40 acres. So Cinderlight does own all these right now. Generally speaking, only 8 parcels are for discussion. But in a meeting this morning with them, the remainder, 640, could potentially be part of the discussion as well. So far, the discussion, even though this is on an open space opportunities map, I had to develop this map for the committee and for this purpose. We never actually looked at these properties under consideration. However, through kind of promises and handshake deals, Greg Lehman with Cinderlight and Juan had an agreement that if Cinderlight ever thought of disposing these, they would contact Juan. And since I know Greg as well, and he knows Juan is retired, he called me and said, I'm living up to my promise. I'm offering these to you. Do you have any interest? And so, I developed a map. I took a look. And then my first question back to Greg, seeing the surrounding ownership, it's all BLM. So the light brown, if you will, is BLM. Right in this area is the county border to Washoe County. And then the light hashing is BLM and Washoe County. It's just a different color because we had to manually make this map because of the county border there. And so I did ask Greg if BLM would could be a feasible owner, and they said yes. So same thing with the Shoals Investments. If there's another suitable property owner, could that work? And so they said yes. Probably the source of funding would be the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act. BLM also is interested. None of us have been up to this property. We are invited. Greg has invited us anytime. BLM is in the process of hiring additional personnel in their lands division. So I asked if I could probably wait till next year, wait till some people are on staff who would be working on this, possibly. So that's what I'm looking at for, is a proposal for next year. They also said they wouldn't have time to probably put an application together. So similar to the past, open space staff has worked on applications for the BLM and for the Forest Service for them to acquire properties. And so the staff recommendation at this time is perhaps just continue down the road I am on right now, is encourage BLM to acquire these and possibly help with the application if they're short on staff time.
Okay, Donna.
Okay. So where is Gonai Road in relation to this property? Okay. Now, and where is the current, the gates to the Cinderlight mine site that goes, as Gonai turns to the right? Is that?
And right in this area is the water tank as you're driving up Gonai Road, the water tank on your left. And then you drive past the subdivisions. And so then you're pretty high up. Similar to Ham, I did develop a view shed map too. So I should have developed a topographic map. As you look to the north on Gonai, these are all where the peaks are, all the various mountain peaks. So it is a very visible area to Carson City.
Okay, I think
But the gates, I'm not exactly sure where those gates are.
I think that's an area that I lead a hike on. So it's not been mined and disturbed, but there are a bunch of roads up there?
The parcels to the west have not been mined. The parcels to the east, some of these have, and they do have mineral claims.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the committee? Any public comments? Are we comfortable with Ann proceeding as she has outlined to try to focus and see if the BLM can consider pursuit of this when their schedule permits? Okay.
Can I add one thing to that motion? Probably this one in Shoals is possibly hiring a consultant to help me with these.
Okay. I think we're aware of the staff limitations that you have, and we certainly all have priorities for your time, so. All right. Do we need a motion, or is general direction sufficient?
I believe I have good direction on all of those. Thank you.
And we do have a budget that allows for outside consulting, so obviously you have to stay within that. And we'll be interested in monitoring budget, as we always are. But okay, anything more on that agenda item? Ann?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Last chance for public comments. We've had a lot of discussion. Thank you all for participating and coming. And you're certainly welcome to stay more. The next item is 3D, possible action to approve the monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch conservation easement for 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 2009, we completed the conservation easement with Michael Fagan, And as one of the routine items on any conservation easement is annual monitoring to make sure that both parties remain consistent with the terms of the easement. And so in your packet is the annual report for 2016. The first part of that, let's see, the photos that range from page 1 to page 13, those were additional photos that were added to the report after the initial conservation easement. They were just items noticed on the property that we're just keeping an eye on. They are important in the terms of that we want to keep the meadow working and pristine in the condition that it is. So we are watching out for erosion. One of the items I will point out, though, on page 10, prior to the conservation easement, Michael Fagan did install a pipeline from one of the springs to bring water down to his cabins. In 2010, we wanted to identify that area just was not revegetating. So further reports after this talked about revegetation, which actually didn't occur, but in seeing the property this year, natural revegetation is occurring. And so at this time, it's even staff's recommendation to say, we believe we're good here. We don't need to monitor this particular site any longer for the future. Then further into the report, what you see starting on page 15 is at the title, Baseline Report Repeat Photo Documentation. These were the photos that were included in the initial baseline. Repeat photo means we go to the same place every year, and that helps us visually to see if anything is changing. There weren't really too many other concerns. There is bull thistle in the meadow. There's been various activities throughout the years to remove that bull thistle. And some of you may recall, I think it was last year, Member Emerson volunteered Muscle Powered and Trash Mom to help us with the weed dig. And Randy Gau's in the audience tonight, and he was a lead on that effort this year. And I think about 13 bags of weeds were dug. And so it is an effort that we will need to keep on, but I think it's a unique opportunity to bring volunteers up to this property. One of the other areas that we're watching is the head cut, which is on pages 17 and 19. We have talked with Michael Fagan about asking the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, to go back out to the site and possibly look at some sort of stabilization. But you can also see in the photo documentation, it really has not changed in the last 7 years or so. But otherwise, we do not have any concerns about the property, and Michael Fagan was pleased with the report as well. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Ann?
One question. Is maybe the reason the head cut hasn't changed is it's been so dry? There hasn't been the water movement through there?
Bruce is the expert on water flows and how head cuts happen, so maybe I can ask him to help.
I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I don't like the head cuts. I'd love to see us do something. I think they've been stable, but I don't think we've had a heavy runoff either.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned now that we're not getting the snows, we're getting the flooding or the flash flooding type incidents, that this could become a much bigger issue.
You know, it gets back down to staff capabilities, but it would be, to me, at least having a plan to address the head cuts would be helpful. And I don't know if any of the money that's set aside could go to cost sharing or something like that, but it would seem to me that stabilizing those guys would be a really worthwhile long-term idea. And the folks further down in the meadow would probably benefit from that as well.
One other item, I don't think we had it in the report, since Heather's still here. Michael Fagan is also working with the Nevada Division of Forestry on a forest stewardship plan for this property.
Great. Might be some resources for stabilizing head cuts out of that.
Just kind of a question. Is there any movement on the purchase? I mean, has anybody come forward? I heard a rumor that Oprah Winfrey was considering buying it, but that fell through.
And I've also heard from one potential buyer as well, but as far as I know, nothing has been moving forward.
Was that Clint Eastwood?
It was UNR, in fact.
Okay, are there any further comments from the committee? Any public comments? This is an action item. Do we have a motion on the approval of the monitoring report? It's okay to make a motion if anybody feels so moved.
I move to approve the monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch Conservation Easement for 2016.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thanks, Ann. Next item would be discussion on mid-year revisions to the quality of life open space budget. And you've given us a little summary there. Ann, do you want to review that quickly?
I can do that. About this time of year, usually December, January, is when staff is provided the remaining balances from the previous fiscal year. And with that money, we have the opportunity to move it around within our respective accounts. And so just thinking ahead on some of our projects, where we were and what we're planning, with the $306,000, I looked at 3 accounts that we needed, perhaps needed money. These are my recommendations. Professional services, I increased that $50,000 to $150,000 for this fiscal year. That's not the current budget because we've already been spending it, but that will be our total budget for the year. Land acquisition, I bumped that up with the idea of needing a match for the Forest Legacy Program for the conservation easement, and then as well as Michael Fagan's fee title, so up to almost $900,000. And then machinery and equipment, we budgeted $36,000 for a truck. I just finished writing the specs with our fleet management office, and 2 of the items I would like to add, which we have on, one of them we have on the current park ranger truck, is a GPS tracking device, and then in addition, I'd like to add a winch. So I was $1,000 short on my spec.
Okay, is there any comment concerning these adjustments? I've been pushing to get more things moving, and I think the consultant budget can be a big help with that, so I see that as a plus. We've got lots of things we can be doing, and we're really limited in terms of our internal capabilities. So my perspective would be that I see these as good moves, and you know, it's a discussion item, but my input would be that I would support, you know, the staff recommendation. Is there any public comment? Okay, last chance at the committee. Nope, all right. Next, staff updates, discussion only. Strategic planning, we took that out of order, and we've been through 4A, 4B. Update on the working groups, Ann, Jennifer, and Iris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Regarding the ordinances, the Deputy District Attorney sent the committee updated language and proposed draft language. We're waiting to hear back from the committee. I don't know if there's any questions on that in a general term.
Laura and I have not connected since we got that. We had, I think, a delivery question for Laura. I think it may have gone to an email address that she doesn't actively use. But in any event, I will pursue that with her to try to see if we can nail that down and get feedback.
Then on the signage plan, briefly, I've caught up with Margie, and I can't remember where Jeremy was on some of these discussions too, but on the signage plan, Jerry helped us identify some of the locations. Margie was going to help us with the RFQ, so we could actually have well-developed signs that can be read by the public. The Parks Commission has also agreed to participate in this effort, so I just need to get back in that connection with Margie and the Parks Commission on the signage plan.
Okay. And the third one, or 3 out of 4, the website.
The website, there were 2 different aspects to this. One, Jen already mentioned that when we're successful bringing an AmeriCorps volunteer on, as well as our new recreation superintendent, they will be helping improve the content of our website. That was one of the elements, was the content. Another part was a trails app. I do have kind of an update on that. I talked with Matt Lawton, who is our asset manager. Is that his title? That's his title. And considering the work that has been done by the Eagle Valley Trails Committee with all their GPS tracks of all the trails around Carson City, what our GIS has the capability of doing is, when it's approved, when we know which trails we can adopt into our system, they can put it behind the scenes for us. And then Carson City has a license with ESRI already. And similar to the program that Donna showed us, I can't remember the preferred. Gut Hook. There's a program through ESRI, which is called Storyteller, I think. So it's a kind of similar base concept, but when we get all the trail information in there, we already have the license. And so it's just a matter of putting it all together again. Unlike apps, that as phones get updated, you need to update the apps. At least when we manage the data and we already have the permit for use, it's already all in the system, and it can be used for multiple purposes around town.
So you see that as moving forward with our AmeriCorps, one of our AmeriCorps people?
There's a number of things. First, we need to know from the Eagle Valley Trails Committee of which trails are the legal trails that we can identify. But the data's all there. And then once we say yes or no, which trails, then it's just a matter of importing it to Carson City.
Is that something that our committee representatives can pursue to define which ones should be on that map when we have the capability of developing it? Donna?
Well, as a member of Eagle Valley Trails Committee, I can tell you right now which are legal trails and which are not legal trails or legitimate trails, however you want to look at it. So, yeah, we can keep you up. EVTC is more than happy to keep you updated on all of that piece. And I just want to make sure, though, that we are bringing in Parks and Recs Committee and Convention and Visitors Bureau so that we're not doing duplicate work, because I know the Visitors Bureau is gone after a grant. So we want to make sure that they're not doing something, we're doing something else. We would like, we need to maximize our effort and focus it. So yeah, Eagle Valley Trails Committee is more than happy to work with the city on making sure that we only identify legal trails, and that as trails become legalized and get adopted in, they get added to this database. Right now, there's not a lot that are considered legal trails. A lot of them are across the Ham property, and that's an issue. The other thing unfortunately, I wanted to get together with you guys before this meeting, but I have not been in town a whole lot. So where are we with the website? Because we had that one meeting with, I can't think her name.
We met with Rachel Snyder.
Yes.
She's with the Information Technology Department. She was going to, you might have to refresh my memory, but look at the sample websites that you provided, see what we could do to possibly realign just the look and make it a little more user-friendly, and she was going to pursue that. So I can check in with Rachel and see where she's at with that. Something that I think, Ann mentioned is definitely that AmeriCorps person can also work with her and assist them. And then our recreation superintendent has a lot of experience in this field, so I think will be helpful. He helped create an app for his organization in Oregon that was really helpful. So I think there's a lot of people just about to be here that'll be really useful.
Of course, AmeriCorps, that's not coming till what, April? I guess that's
Yeah, we
not
just
that
have to
far away now, but
yeah, it's really not. But they would focus on the website, marketing, our social media pages, the things that we just really haven't been able to do.
But from the subgroup perspective, it might not hurt to meet with the city's representatives again, just to kind of, if nothing else, get everybody prepared to be able to move forward and get some reaction to what you had provided.
yeah, absolutely. And like I say, Eagle Valley Trails Committee is more than happy to, in fact, I think you already have most of the maps, but, to keep you up to date on the maps, what we've got available and everything. And like I say, the report is almost done. It's a huge report, and it includes recommendations on where we would go from here as to development and upgrading and fixing trails, et cetera, and bringing trails online as legitimate, recognized trails, which is really important for this whole process. Yes, I'm going to be home more for a while now, I hope, and talk to you about a meeting.
Okay, thank you, Donna. And Ann and Jennifer, I appreciate the regular agenda item for our working groups. If any of our working groups owe you something, please bug me during the interim between meetings so that I can not only be aware, but hopefully try to address our ability to respond or provide the inputs you need in order for things to move forward. Because the whole purpose of these working groups is to allow things to move forward between our meetings and in supplement to what staff can do. Any other comments, thoughts? Terry, did you have something?
Not about this item.
Okay. Public comment? Nothing on this one? Oh, I'm sorry, Robin. Come forward.
Robin Orloff here. Hello, Chairman Scott, committee. Did we just discuss the signs? Is that going to come up to public discussion, some of the working groups in this meeting or in a future meeting?
We will come out for public comment and input, yes.
At a later meeting or now? Or at this meeting?
If you have comments, please provide them.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out if at some point, I know Jerry and I talked about signs and where they might be, if that's going to come out for public consideration. And then just some rhetorical or actual questions. I'm wondering about maybe in a future meeting, could we discuss perhaps, are we still considering a fence or some kind of barrier on that ridge line, the ridge road from Graffiti Rock to the summit? So I don't know if that can come up as an agenda item or for discussion in the future. Also, in discussing Horse Creek tonight, being a conservation easement, I had a question if the south end, or if the whole Prison Hill area will ever come up under discussion as to if we're conforming to the conservation easement. Are we protecting, preserving, and that area, and is it going to be looked at over the course of 5 years? Is the BLM going to be coming in? Are we going to have photos like you have for Horse Creek? Are we going to look at areas that aren't being taken care of, and then what are we going to do about it? My understanding with the conservation easement is that if areas aren't being protected, we can go in and either restrict areas, revegetate, correct, whatever we need to do. So I didn't want to lose sight of that in view of some of the discussion of the other areas. And I just wanted to briefly say, I'd love, again, Prison Hill, I guess maybe this is irrelevant to our discussion, but I'd love to see an agenda item perhaps about getting the OHV folks involved in helping to clean up their area. I've been cleaning that area up, but I'd like to see some involvement by the people that are using it. So that's kind of ties into the signs. That's why I'm talking about this. We're talking about signs between OHV, non-OHV area. So just for future discussion.
Thank you, Robin. I think important items, some of that strikes me as things that staff can be looking at, monitoring. If we need an agenda item, I think that's fine, but I'm not sure we have to wait on some of that. I would hate to see us wait several years and determine from this committee and this perspective that we have a problem when we're supposed to be the managers today. So hopefully the monitoring, which we talked about last time, can help us maybe get some early warning and some early prioritization of some of the things that Robin's referring to, and maybe some things we can move forward with from the staff perspective. Any other comments on that item? Jerry?
Yeah, one thing that I think needs immediate or should be prioritized attention by Ann, and maybe one of those, I don't know what they're called, but you put one in it on the other part of Prison Hill to prevent motorbikes from going through to a non-motorized area with those bars, whatever you call those things. On the end of Bennett Avenue, there is an area that has no signage, nothing, and easy access for any bike, OHC guy, or whatever, who could go up there and just start terrorizing that non-motorized area. So I kind of like to see something happen there, and not in 4 months. I mean, if we have the ability and the assets to do that, I think that would be a really great thing.
And I know the entrance that you're talking about, and I guess maybe the reason we haven't put one, just the few times that I've gone up there, except for the neighbors, not many people know about that access. And so I didn't know how heavily it was used because I haven't seen tracks, but if it is a problem, we can certainly put one of the Y gates up.
I'm not, here's my whole stance on this thing. Either it's allowed or it's not allowed. It shouldn't be allowed for the residents and not allowed for the public. But once we make up our mind that that's a non-motorized area, then I think we need to protect it. So.
Right, and that's not what I'm saying. Yeah, it is a non-motorized area. That is without a doubt. It's just the entrance, the access to get there looks like someone's driveway.
Sure does.
So it doesn't appear to be a public access. It is, but it just doesn't appear that way.
So are we thinking that we can do something, should do something?
That's easy to do.
Okay, let's go ahead. Okay. Anything else on that agenda item? Public comment? Yes.
My name is Ron Moe. I'm a citizen here, and I've gone up Prison Hill a lot in the last 25, 30 years. There's been a lot of changes. And the one thing I see, and so it just got to a head about 2 weeks ago. I go up to the top, a little workout, but they're the best views of our area. Picturesque Job's sister and all that. The Carson Range, you see the Sierras down further. And I see on these signs, drive on existing roads only. And it's like, I see stuff to where, well, hey, I'll drive off on another thing and start another road. Now that's existing. But what I saw at least some years ago, I didn't see roads. And I see on the signs, drive on existing trails. They're not trails. I mean, there's areas where there's two vehicles can go by each other. I'm not talking about motorcycles. But they do some tearing up, and the vegetation is going away. I know here you talk about conservation, preservation, and it's just not looking like it should. And there's a lot of devegetation on that south end, the most beautiful area of Prison Hill, the rock formations, the views to the mountains in the south. And somehow we need to restrict some of these motor vehicles. It's my opinion, at least. And so much of it, there was a fence from that graffiti rock to the east at one time. It didn't last long. I mean, the main road going up, it was broken up soon, and I'm not sure when they took the rest down and away because I couldn't see the remnants of it. So anyway, just some comment, and you can see I'm terrified to get up in front of you. Anyway, I don't know, just throwing that out. It's there's about 5 main roads that go up to the top to where I think there was just a remnant of a road just because of the benchmark, the triangulation point for surveying. And now it's, I don't know, it's changed whether for the better or not, and I'm sorry to see it. It's the most beautiful area there is in town of views, and if you haven't been to that south area, it's pretty neat, the rock formations, the view of the valley, seeing the river meander between Hot Springs Mountain and Prison Hill. So anyway, just throwing that out. Anyway, I appreciate, I'm sorry I didn't show my respect to you and the committee, but anyway, I appreciate all the work people do in different parts of government, all the hours they take and work at it. So I just want to mention that. Sorry to start out that way.
Thank you for taking the time, Ron, and I don't think any of us feel disrespected.
But calling those roads trails is, I'm not sure, it's a misstatement at least. We're I would like to see right on existing roads, right on designated roads. So that way, if somebody makes a road, it's not, hey, anybody can go on it now. Do you understand that?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
What I'm thinking is, I think you're referring to the motorized portion of Prison Hill.
Right.
And of course,
At least what I think.
We inherited that from BLM, but we have management responsibility now. And one of the things we've talked about is an inventory of the existing roads so that we could better define what is existing and how we would try to manage people from just creating new roads. And whether they're roads or trails, potentially for OHVs, you're going to get roads and not just trails because it's open to motorized. But that doesn't mean we can't try to manage to keep them on existing disturbed areas and pathways and designate those appropriately.
Appreciate that.
And I think the fence between the motorized and the non-motorized has been the subject of some discussion in the past. I'm not aware that it's not intact. If it's not, that's certainly a maintenance item that we can look at. I had the impression that it was pretty well defined, but maybe not, I think we've had some problems with people crossing over at certain points in the past, but I thought that had been dealt with kind of as a management level. But if we're missing something there, please feel free to coordinate with staff to make sure that we understand where you're seeing things that need to be addressed, because the separation of motorized and non-motorized is pretty critical.
It's just what I see, all these extra roads that are coming about, the extra erosion and vegetation that's diminishing. And anyway, it's almost from a non-conservation person to see what's happening. It's kind of an interesting way to go, to say the least. But the fence, it looks, it's good. It's just, I see around that graffiti rock. That's kind of a sorry state of a rock, but where they come around the east side and then back to the west, and I'm seeing it to start to come down there. And it's just like, you know, I see all these new trails, so to speak. And it's, I see one little carcinate plastic thing up. A lot of places it's no vehicles. But there's one old BLM one that says something like riparian restoration closed down to the west side. And I was just like, oh. And I remember seeing a sign up by that graffiti rock. There used to be a sign, drive on existing roads there. A lot of things like that, they get destroyed. But anyway, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hope things look better going forward. Thanks.
Is there any other public comment?
To add to your comments, Bruce, and to add to your concern as well, in the last meeting there was some OHV groups that came and they had interest in doing some organized activities on Prison Hill, and contrary to what you might think, well, that's just going to promote more OHV use of the area. Maybe not necessarily a good thing, but the way I see it is organized groups that have a good reputation, they can end up being the stewards of these trails and these roads. And with ongoing events and the activity becoming more popularized, rather than having just, I mean, you're still going to have the person, you know, the kids or the people that don't respect the trails and they're just going to make their own. That's always going to happen. But I think if that area can become more popularized with that event, and we have these groups that that can act as the stewards of the trails, that the situation might improve. At least that's my optimistic view of what's going on with that area of Prison Hill.
Any other comments from the committee? Public comments? Robin.
Robin Orloff again. Ron and I have talked about the motorized area, and I wanted to reassure you that the fence that was put in recently, the wire fence is totally intact. That one from the bottom up to Graffiti Rock. And I think Ron was mentioning perhaps another fence that used to be there that isn't there anymore, but not one that was put in by you guys, by the open space. And I agree with Jeremy that maybe if we can get some responsible stewardship by the OHV, the two men that talked at the last meeting seem to really want to do that and to do some education and get their people involved in stewardship, which I would like to see that as a start. And if that doesn't work, then we go to other measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Any other public comment? All right. 4C, staff update on activities, projects, and grants located on open space properties within the Carson River area.
My plan is just to keep this short, but feel free if you have any questions.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Just two of the items I want to highlight. Last time we talked about the Carson River Mercury Superfund site tour. It has been rescheduled. This date seems to kind of keep moving around a little bit. But right now it's tentatively scheduled February 21st. So if you want to pencil that in, and if you're interested, contact the Carson Water Subconservancy yourself. And then the other item I want to highlight, we received official notice on December 8th, I believe it was, that we were awarded more than $1.8 million for our trails along Prison Hill, Silver Saddle, and Buzzy's Ranch. One of the most exciting things about that It was, the announcement itself was the director of BLM, Neil Cornsey. He's a Nevada native from Elko. He spent a lot of time in Carson City when we were working on our lands bill in 2006, 7, 8. As an aide, I think, to Senator Reed at the time. So he's familiar with us, he's familiar with our properties, and so when he made this announcement at Red Rocks down in Las Vegas, he highlighted 3 projects, and one of them was ours. So that was very exciting.
That's great. Ann, would you mind emailing to the committee members just kind of the highlights of what is covered in that grant so we can kind of keep that in focus?
I will do that.
Thank you. Yes, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to thank Ann and congratulate Ann because Ann really deserves all the credit on this application. It's a huge application. It was really well written. I mean, we're so lucky to have Ann as part of the team and the one that submitted that grant. So Carson City and the citizens definitely benefit, but we owe a lot of gratitude to Ann for all the hard work on that project.
Thanks. Great point. And thank you, Ann. Anything else on Carson River projects?
Unless you have any questions on the items in your staff report, I won't add
Any
anything more.
committee questions? Any public comment or questions? Okay, other areas.
The next staff report highlights 2 areas that we've been working on. Ash Canyon Road with a couple back-to-back grants from the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. Our last grant had some funding to replant some motorized areas that we wanted to rehab. And on October 22nd, we had an Eagle Scout, Jack Cordonaway, who came out with his troop and did a fantastic job up there. So if you've not seen it, I think it's a great example of or what I hope that we can see for restoration of some of these damaged areas.
And do we have any way of providing recognition for a project like that, for somebody like Jack, a plaque, an award of some kind, or a thank you?
We really haven't done anything extra for any of our scout projects.
But, you know, I think some of them are just outstanding additions, and we might think about that. Anything else on that one, Ann?
No, the other item in there is just an update on Quill Canyon and working with Carson High School. We've been working with them for 3 years on, again, outdoor education opportunities up there. It's the end of their grant. If we can continue working with them, I think it's a great opportunity to get the high school students out and learn about nature.
You know, that's great. And to me, it just reinforces the value of a volunteer coordinator or somebody to kind of bring together some of those neat things that have really amplified our program by outside help. Okay, anything else, Ann, on that?
That's the last comment on that agenda item.
Okay, any comments or questions from the committee? Public comments? I'm doing pretty well, Iris. All right, member announcements and requests for information. Committee members, yes, Margie.
I was wondering, I know you're really crazy busy, but I was wondering if you would ask maybe the park ranger or our open space ranger to check in the mode area on the, let's see, get my directions right, on the west side of Prison Hill. Just kind of do a quick look-see and see what kind of weeds are growing. I heard from someone that there are some weeds, and I haven't been up to look. My question would be, are they nuisance weeds? Are they the early colonizers? Is it something we need to worry about, or do we need to, is it okay? So I just wondered if you could kind of check into that. I don't even need to hear back, just if you could please.
Do you have a more specific area of the west side of Prison Hill?
The west side of Prison Hill, there was an area that I saw earlier was mowed to kind of protect to reduce some fire fuels.
You're talking right along the fence off of Kuntz?
Yes, along the fence off of Kuntz. And I had heard from someone that it seemed to be a weed source, and I'm not sure what kind of weeds or if it's something that we need to be concerned about, but just kind of check it out.
Yeah, and maybe we can follow up. And I do know Coons, but just to make sure. I'd like to follow up with you just to maximize time or minimize time to go to the area and to try to correctly identify. I know there's been a lot of mustards in the area.
Okay, any other committee inputs?
I
Jeremy.
got one, Bruce. And do you know if there is some information about the roads up Ash Canyon that are slated for closure or proposed for closure?
Maybe the best that I can give you is our NDP grants for Ash Canyon identified all along that route, not to call them roads, but where unofficial, unauthorized vehicles have driven. That plan does identify closures of those areas. And with the only official road being the road. All the offshoots to the north are not roads.
That's exactly what I was referring to. Thanks. Yeah, I'd appreciate if I could get my hands on that.
Okay, any other comments? I'd like to suggest that we think about a field review for the committee at some point in the spring. Jack talked about it with regard to the Ducks Unlimited work, but I think it would be real helpful for the committee to see some things on the ground, and maybe we can work something out where we could do that.
I think that's a great idea. And even just to see some of the properties some of you may not be familiar with too.
I'd like to see the graffiti that Robin's been putting on that rock. Okay, any public comment? All right, anything more from staff? More from the committee? Okay, thank you all for your time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do I have to have public comment, Iris? Oh, okay, meeting adjourned.